Welcome to the Ribbon Box podcast. I'm Eloise, the founder. Each week we bring you expert interviews, reader stories, holistic offers, and more. Subscribe to our podcast for free to become an insider and never miss an episode. Hello, welcome. Today on the Ribbon Box podcast, I am being joined by Phoenix Maas, who is a qualified osteopath and functional medicine practitioner at the Maas Clinic. Welcome.
Hello, I'm so glad to be here. This is so exciting.
I'm really excited to ask you some great questions from our community today. We're going to be talking about the power of you. So what is integrative medicine and why is it the future of U-shaped healthcare? And this episode is powered by the Maas Clinic, a thoughtfully designed holistic centre with locations in West Sussex and London, where gorgeous surroundings reflect the same attention to detail and care as their personalised root cause approach to care, which we will be discussing today. So welcome, Phoenix.
I know, it's so exciting. I'm so glad. It's such exciting topics, I think. I love my job so much to be able to spread the word about, integrated medicine and functional medicine is just goes beyond, really.
Absolutely. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about you and what you specialise in, as well as your background?
So I suppose my background was I was born and bred in the world of functional medicine. My dad's a functional medicine practitioner who originally trained and qualified as an osteopath and then went down that road, and I swiftly followed in his footsteps, to be fair. I suppose in terms of specializations, I fell into my love of women's health and pediatrics when I was at university studying osteopathy, because we were working with a lot of pre-pregnancy and then pregnancy at the time and then post-pregnancy, which was great. And then I started to see, as I sort of finished up my 4 years, women with reproductive challenges who are coming in with back pain and diaphragm pain and leg pain, and I loved it because it was helpful, but then in the short term they would feel really good, and then the long term they would be back in 2 weeks. And so then I started talking to my dad and was like, well, I don't know what to do. And he was like, well, try nutrition and supplements and Agnus Castus and go for those recommendations. And I was a bit nervous because I was a student at the time. And so then I started talking to my clinic tutors, and some of them were really, really supportive and lifestyle is a big factor. Educate your patients on it. And others were like, it's not your job to do that. Wiggle their leg around, mobilize their back, send them out the door. I was like, that's just not fulfilling enough or good enough for me. And then I had a mini sort of health crises of my own, as I think most people do who get into this world, or the world of functional medicine, where I went to see, or I was having really irregular periods. I was mad stressed at university, not eating healthy, not sleeping well. As I say, had a regular period, thought I'm going to go to the gynecologist to make sure nothing abnormal is happening, which I did. And he was like, oh, you've got PCOS. And I was like, oh, okay, great. Thank you for that. And he was like, do you want to go onto the contraceptive pill? And I said, no, I've done that roundabout at 16, was onto 3 different ones, didn't work for me at all. And he was like, okay, well then you have to get mindful of the fact that when you want to have kids, you've got to have them by the age of 27. And I was like, I know, right? And I was like, okay, well, I'm in my 4th year of university and I will have been graduated for a whole 2 years at that point. I don't want to have kids at 27. What else can I do? And he was like, well, just make peace with it or consider IVF or surrogacy long term. And I was like, okay, wow, this is not good. And I left the appointment, mindful or grateful that I didn't have any broader issues going on. Also really I don't want to have kids at 27. I don't want to do that. Not yet. Long-term, great, but I will have just been fresh. I want to learn and live life. And so I called my dad and said, Dad, this is what the gynecologist has said. And he said, great, here's what we're going to do. And I worked through, the last 6 months of my university, and then really, started paying attention better in university, and finishing my dissertation and prepping for my exams were so different. It wasn't a stressful process. It was a really enjoying process or a joyful process. And I went from there, and then I studied functional medicine at the IFM, and then went into now doing another master's degree in it. So it's just an ever learning, evolving passion of mine now.
Wow, I can imagine. I mean, to be told that without any kind of perception of what might happen in the future, that's such a way to terrify you in your early 20s.
Absolutely petrifying. And my partner at the time was with me, and he was like, what do you want to do? I mean, he's still with me now, he's still my partner, but you know, he was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, none of those options, to be honest. I just want to live life. I'm, as I say, finishing university. I've got, you know, the next 6 months are filled with exams and dissertations and, you know, just trying to just about survive. I don't want to think about kids now. And so, as I say, that was the wake up call to me of how much lifestyle can affect, you know, health, because I went into university happy and healthy and finished A levels and did a gap year working in the clinic. And so I had an understanding, and then I don't think I really stepped up for air because we had the whole COVID pandemic in the first year of my university. So it was full on. And then that happened. And I was like, oh my goodness, the bubble has popped. I can't keep living life the way that I am, despite having the dad that I do, who was like, Phoenix, pull yourself together, please. So that was the shift for me. And I think I love my job because of it, you know, being able to fill people with joy and empower women and make them feel knowledgeable and in control of their own health. Because in that moment, like, I was sat there like, oh my God, I'm not in control of any of this. Like, bar the exams I've got next week, I'm not in control of when I get to have kids or if I go onto the pill or anything like that. And so it was a moment of regaining control and empowerment. And that's what I now love giving to women from a functional perspective.
Integrative medicine, I'm a big fan. So, as some people listening may know, I have 5 children, and I have 2 sets of twins. So, I've had 3 pregnancies, 2 of which were carrying twins. And obviously, that puts such a strain on your body. And I feel like I got to the stage where I almost turned to see an osteopath too late. It was very, very helpful, but I wish that I had taken positive steps to set my body up ahead of time, even in preconception phase, versus waiting until I had sciatica to try and solve a problem.
And the pelvic girdle pain that kicks in and all of it. I got it. I think in terms of integrated medicine, or I should say osteopathy, is amazing because it gives me as a practitioner an incredible setup to the physiology of the body, the pathophysiology that takes place. Our first 2 years, we're trained at the same levels as GP, and then, you know, we transition off into the more manual therapy side of things. But I think that gave me an excellent physiology understanding, right? Biomechanical understanding. And then the functional and integrated medicine world brings in this beautiful biochemistry behind it, and it marries amazing. And I love having, you know, I'm not a GP, I will not pretend to be a GP, but I love having an understanding of conventional medicine and traditional medicine or allopathic medicine, whatever term you want to go with, and being able to blend that with integrated medicine, because it's I feel like it's like, oh, well, either you sit on the, you know, traditional side or you sit on the holistic side, and they're opposing each other. And I think integrated medicine creates this beautiful middle ground of the understanding of conventional medicine in terms of disease process and what happens and how to treat it. And then functional medicine brings in this beautiful of lifestyle and diet and all the other factors, genetic testing, hormone testing, and you get this amazing outcome of health in the end, really.
For anyone who doesn't know, please could you explain to us what is integrative medicine and how does it differ from standard approach that most people experience with healthcare today?
So I think integrated medicine or traditional medicine looks at the disease that a person has, so the set of symptoms they're coming in with, whether it's high blood pressure or high cholesterol, or even you could go down to PCOS, and they go, well, here is the traditional fix for it, right? Here's the pill, here's the whatever process we're going to follow. And functional medicine looks at, okay, well, you've got the PCOS going on. What is your sleep routine like? What is your diet like? What is your lifestyle like? What is your exercise routine like? And then I think integrated medicine, and functional medicine practitioners will do it, but I think integrated medicine brings in the beauty of the testing from conventional medicine in terms of the bloods with the beauty of the functional realm of testing in terms of organic acids and hormones and microbiome, and you bring them together, and that creates integrated medicine, really. And I mean, you can bring in traditional Chinese medicine if you want, and Eastern medicine in terms of acupuncture, and the world is your oyster then, really, in terms of health.
You often talk about a U-shaped treatment plan for and whole person care. What does that mean in terms of general practice, and why is it so central to what you do at the Maas Clinic?
I think, or for me and us at the clinic, U-shaped healthcare is all about genetics, and that's where my dad's passion lies. It's where my passion lies, and I genuinely believe it is the future of medicine. Genetic testing, or our baseline testing, is blood testing to understand what systems are going wrong, and then we do genetic testing to understand what is the person's blueprint, right? Because your genes are different to my genes, are different to Joe Smith's genes, are different to Jane's genes, you know? And it when you think about it in the context of health, like our genome originated from Luca, right? So that last common or last universal common ancestor 4 billion years ago, like massively long ago. And then you think about our mitochondria, which is where our energy comes in from this symbiotic relationship that began 2 billion years ago. And then, you know, in the last 150 years, 200 years is when humans' health has started to decline. And it's not the genes that have created that damage, right? There are, over 20,000 gene codes. And so for me, and each human has 0.1% difference. So it's understanding what makes that person unique in terms of their genetics, and then understanding the whole system around it. So we get the architectural plans, and then we go, well, what are the hormones doing? Why are they doing that? What is the gut microbiome doing? Because, you know, you can look at FUT2 gene codes, right, that are all about B12 absorption. And in one sense, if you're slightly flawed at your B12 absorption, in that same breath, that gene codes means you have a more abundant microbiome. And it's the beauty of that. And so being able to measure B12 levels in the blood while being able to support a person's microbiome is just crazy. That's what it means, is tailoring it to you and who you are genetically, and then whole system wise, for me at least.
Fascinating. I'll tell you what happened to me, and you may have seen other patients who are struggling with this chronic urticaria. But in 2015, just randomly one day, I broke out in hives. And since that day, I have had hives every single day for 10 years, and it's never got better. And I just have to mask it with taking an antihistamine. And I was so worried that this was going to affect my fertility. Do you see people coming to you with, you know, immunology issues where they want to get to the root cause?
Yes, all the time. And, you know, your hives example is a great one, right? Because if we think about those genes, there's COMT, right? The catecholamine methyltransferase. It's in charge of breaking down our catecholamines. So that is histamines, which is in charge of those hives. And I mean, you could spin off and go into detox and CYP3A4 and that whole pathway, but I'll stick it to the COMT. And so you get COMT breaking down histamine, so that level of inflammation. You get COMT breaking down dopamine, so our get things done neurotransmitter, feel a real sense of accomplishment and really, really good and achievement. And then it also breaks down adrenaline. So our fight, flight, like, oh my God, do I have to run? Do I have to fight? What do I have to do? How do I protect? And then it also breaks down estrogen. So we have 4 really, really important roads meeting this bridge. And if there's a genetic shortfall there, compiled with these external lifestyle, environmental stressors that our bodies, 4 billion years ago wouldn't have to deal with, but now our genes have to learn and figure out how to deal with them. These adaptive responses come through, and that's how we can really make better health. That's the truth for the future.
Fascinating. And when you combine this approach of medicine, conventional and functional medicine, how do you decide which tools to pull from each when you're working with a patient?
I think that is where integrated medicine shines. It's not sort of one or the other, or in our clinic it isn't. We use the blood testing in conventional medicine, so liver function panels, cholesterol panels, white blood cells, red blood cells, EBV, CMV testing. We use those great markers, and we use a slightly tighter, reference range than what conventional medicine would, but we bring them in. Like, that's appointment 2 in our clinic. It's what is going on with your biochemistry right now. My lab is downstairs. We get the results in 20 minutes. It's amazing. And then from there, we bring in that functional testing, which usually takes longer, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, depending on. But I think right now, in terms of health, we're at this beautiful new era of conventional medicine accepting and understanding that there are major lifestyle players and lifestyle factors and environmental factors in what influence our health. What was once thought to be so, oh, well, it's just fate, or it's just luck. Oh, that's an unlucky situation. There are setups for it. You think about dementia and the 17 lifestyle factors that can be identified to prevent dementia. And yes, there's the APOE genes. But if you have them, you just work harder at the lifestyle, or the 8 lifestyle factors between cardiometabolic diseases. One of the highest climbing disease processes. There are 8 things that a person can do to influence that. Or PCOS, you can go in terms of old thinking of, oh, well, it's just about having cysts on the ovaries and having too much testosterone. And now we can track it back to its insulin resistance and gut health and chronic inflammation and stress dysregulation and sleep dysregulation. And there are these powerful factors that I think conventional medicine is now acknowledging, that functional medicine has been sort of preaching for a while. And as I say, we're at this gorgeous new era of full human empowerment across the board.
For you personally, you mentioned PCOS. Have things improved for you with symptoms, for example, since you've been taking this integrative approach yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was at university at the time, so I can't say I swapped and was living the most healthy lifestyle. It would be a lie if I said that. But I went on a really active journey of meal prepping because I was doing full-time university and then clinic. So I was doing the 2 and writing the dissertation. And I made sure I was implementing like a really good sleep routine. It doesn't take a lot to go, okay, well, I'm turning off my phone at 8:30 and I'm in bed by 9. And getting up, and I had 2 dogs. I still have 2 dogs. I was, where I felt like I was almost letting them down because I was taking them out into the garden and throwing the ball. I made more of an effort to take them out walking, whether it was to Moat Park, because I went to university in Kent. So I'd take them walking around Moat Park or drive them to the beach. And I was getting out, and the really easy lifestyle changes I actively made. And then I did go on to a really handful of supplements, including B vitamins, inositol, to start controlling that blood sugar regulation, adrenal complexes with, ginseng, licorice to help support. And I didn't have the means to go full ham like I do now in my day-to-day life because it was very circumstantial then, but I made really positive changes. And 2 years later I went back to have an ultrasound done because I was 26 and I was like, well, this is, if I'm gonna hear about it, I'm gonna hear about it now. Went and had an ultrasound. The lady was doing it, and I was like, so tell me, are there cysts? And she was like, no, why would there be cysts? And I said, I know. I was like, wait, what? She was like, no, I don't see any cysts on your ovaries at all. And I was like, you're joking me. This is just I honestly felt like it was a mean joke. And she was like, no, I can't see any cysts. And it's so true. I'd done, it took time. It wasn't an overnight quick fix pill. It took 2 years, but I got back to that point of having really good hormonal control and blood sugar levels and having a really good sleep routine. My sleep, I'm in bed by 9 o'clock now. You don't catch me up past then. So it was those lifestyle changes, and I was so happy and pleased. And now, kids in the future, great, but optimizing my health and feeling 100% is now my main goal, to be honest, and walking the dogs.
Amazing. I love hearing stories like that. That's fantastic. And you've talked a little bit about the importance of genes, which I don't think people talk enough about. Complex ones like CYP3A4, COMT, and one that people may have heard of before, MTHFR. Why are these so important, and what can they tell someone about their health and how to optimize it?
So that COMT gene, I feel like in terms of women, I mean, across the board, in terms of people is really important, but in terms of women, because we have such fluctuating hormonal cycles, if you can really optimize that gene to get your estrogen breaking down when it's meant to and then rising when it's meant to, as well as those other, the dopamine and the histamine and the adrenaline, you can really ace that. You can feel good, and you remove the anxiety and the PMS and the irritability and the estrogen dominance and the really sore boobs and the want to, when you're on your period, just curl up and wrap yourself in a blanket and not move for 5 days kind of thing. So that COMT gene is really important. And then think about MTHFR, and you can get really sciencey with it in terms of the breakdowns of C677T and A1298C and lots more is being talked about it, but ultimately, it affects the folate cycle. And when we think about methylation, which is that 4 billion year old process, that cellular reaction that's taking place, it is so important, and it follows the same cycle, right? We describe it in clinic, and LifeCode, the gene testing company we use, map it out beautifully, which is 5 roundabouts, right? All starts with folate. So the plants and the goodness that you eat. And that runs from folate from the salad or the chimichurri or the parsley you put in your mouth through to that 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. And then off of that, it spins off into all about proteins. So how do you absorb your proteins, where that FUT2 gene code comes in? And that's how you build and repair your DNA and build muscle and feel really good, because our mitochondria are the most dense in our muscle, and that feeds our liver, and that goes then into the brain and all about the neurotransmitters and serotonin, so feeling really contented, and dopamine that feels really helps us get that sense of achievement and feel really good. And same with the adrenaline, and that COMT gene comes in again, and then it goes into the urea cycle. But if we're thinking about MTHFR and its application now, it is so important to get that gene working properly, because those spin-offs, whether it's neurotransmitter related or cardiac homocysteine related, we don't want homocysteine going too high, because long-term it has cardiovascular effects, it has fertility effects, immunity effects, mood effects. And that's same with that A1298C spin-off, is that really impacts those neurotransmitters. So how contented do you really feel in your life? Do you stop and smell the flowers and look up at the clouds and go, wow, what a lovely shape that is, and oh, the sun is shining today and I feel really good? And if those neurotransmitters aren't working so well as the hormones, it's hard to find that mini joy in life outside of we talk about those dopamine bombs on TikTok, or people are like, oh, what is my dopamine checklist? But actually, dopamine is made from vitamin D. You can take vitamin D supplementation, lift your dopamine up and feel really good, so that you're not falling into the whole, me personally, when I feel my vitamin D going low, I'm like, oh, let me go on to a shop and just buy some new stuff for my house and my throw pillows and the blankets.
100%. I can see I feel lifted when the sun is out. It just completely changes my mood.
Feels so good, there's nothing, like I say, I grew up in Barbados, right? I'm a sun baby through and through. When the sun is out, I'm there. I love to nap in the sunshine. It's just, and so that gene, that sunshine, helps us make our dopamine. But routing back to that, MTHFR, and more so that methylation cycle, if you can get that foundational set of gene codes working with B vitamins, so a B complex, avoiding folic acid, because if you by chance carry that MTHFR gene code, it might be slightly harder for you to break it down. But if you can get a really good B complex, vitamin D, and sit in front of an infrared lamp or in front of an infrared sauna, which is going to support detox, you can change your life with those really simple 3 factors. Honestly, it's great.
Very cool to hear more about. Can you share a real life example of a patient that you may have seen where they had a shift from managing symptoms to achieving real lasting wellness by going deeper with integrative care?
Gosh, I think we see so many cases in the clinic. I suppose best one I can give, it was a female in her mid to late 20s. And she came in after having an episode or being diagnosed with really, really extreme hyperthyroidism. So off the Richter scale, immediately the doctors put her on blood pressure meds and carbimazole and she just didn't want to do it. She's 27, right? And so we're chatting in terms of our appointment 1, which is looking at, you know, the antecedents, what's in the history from her genetic pipeline through to what her parents experienced. What are the triggers? So what are the things in her life that set her up to get where she is now? And then what are the mediators? And so what we discovered was that her mum was suffering from autoimmune diseases, right? The patient was going full down the Graves' disease pathway. And then the triggers were that she had HPV, and then she had Epstein-Barr virus, glandular fever, and mumps. And the amazing thing about methylation and what it's taught us is that those methyl groups, that MTHFR gene code, is basically like the guard or the guard commander to keeping those viruses in their inactive state, right? To keep them locked away. And when we undergo chronic stress, we use those methyl groups to support hormone function, right? Because the body's then thinking, run from the saber-toothed tiger. We've got to go. We have to make it through this situation. And then in the background, those viruses are like, oh, well, there are no guards around. We're going to have a party and invade some cells. And that upregulates the immune system even more. And so she had been undergoing a lot of stress at work, and her lifestyle had shifted. She was working in London at the time. And, you know, we were like, okay, so we're going to do hormone testing off the bat, because hormones and thyroid go hand in hand. We're going to do stool testing because one of the mediators we'd sort of discovered was that she was only eating beige foods. And I was like, why are you only eating beige foods? And she said, anytime I eat any meat or any vegetables, I bloat and I swell, and then I swing one way in terms of bowel movements and then the complete other way, and there's no control. And so I eat crackers. I was like, okay, we need to work on that. So stool test for you. And then we did hormones, we did the stool, and then we did the EBV CMV testing. And we also did methylation markers. And when I say methylation markers, I mean B12, folate, vitamin D, homocysteine, and then active B12. And her vitamin D came in at an atrocious 22. It should be, for reference, it should be sort of between 124 and 224. So she was down at 22. We then got her Dutch test in, and her sex hormones, so her progesterone, her estrogen, her testosterone was good. She was massively estrogen dominant, but they were okay. But her cortisol was just basically a straight line on the graph. And then we got the final semi-final piece of the puzzle in through the through the stool test, and she had massive amounts of autoimmune causing bacteria like Prevotella and Klebsiella pneumonia and Ruminococcus. And then I was like, okay, we're creating the treatment plan personalized to her. We get her DNA test in. She carries 2 MTHFR faults. She actually carried a fast COMT, but a slow vitamin D receptor. And she was really slow at making SAMe, which is that compound that helps COMT work effectively. And then we got her EBV and CMV results in, and her CMV was above what the lab could actually read.
Wow.
I got a call from the lab to say, we can't mark it, so we're having to put it as above 500. And I was like, okay, so we're dealing with a really extreme situation here. And so what we did was support the methylation first and foremost, right? Get the foundation working properly. So run each of those cycles. And after we did that, we supported her liver detox so she could start clearing. And I mean, the methylation was doing that via the transsulfuration pathway, but then we went into the glutathione and the CoQ10 and zinc and those other major cofactors. And after that, we then got the hormones, or simultaneously we got her hormones working with, the adrenal complexes and licorice root and ginseng. And then we blasted via bioresonance testing the crap out of, excuse the pun, out of her guts and those bad bacteria, and she did a full gut cleanse. And then a year later, or not even a year later, I think it was about 9 months later, she went back to her endocrinologist to say, I want to come off of these medications, or can you lower them at least, right? I don't want to be on the carbimazole anymore. And her endocrinologist looked at her numbers and genuinely didn't believe that they were her tests. Like, we had done testing through here, and the endocrinologist double checked her numbers through her own lab. And so we then did all the retesting. Her vitamin D had gone up, her, cortisol had stabilized, her sex hormones were working good. She wasn't estrogen dominant. We'd gotten rid of the bacteria. And that, anti-TPO, that Graves' disease thyroid marker, had just come down more so than her endocrinologist could actually believe. And now she feels really good. And as I say, has the lifestyle factors and the diet and, the baseline. She started on lots of supplements. I won't pretend she did, with about 20 of them. But now she takes the basic ones and she's living her best life in Portugal. And so it was a whole lifestyle shift that took place.
What an amazing story. You're making me want to get tested now. I think for anyone, whatever your situation and where you're at in your fertility journey or your well-being journey, this approach could support in so many ways. It's so worth investigating.
It is, and I think it often takes a crisis like I had with mine, like she had with hers, to sort of have that bubble pop and go, what is going on? It's not okay for me to be feeling really tired and living off of 4 cups of coffee and, not being able to remember what I said an hour ago or what I did an hour ago. And it is just absolutely amazing, the evidence that we now have to support lifestyle and gene testing and the positive changes, it can make. It's great. It's incredible. And don't let it be a health crisis. Do it for you. Do it to feel really good and live your best life and prevent the health crises. That's what we're all about.
What are some of the biggest myths or assumptions about integrative medicine or health that you're constantly debunking in your practice?
I think that I suppose I see the people that are at their wits' end with the traditional healthcare system that have been told, your blood numbers look fine, your hormones are okay, have you tried walking 10,000 steps every day? One of my favorite ones that I was told was, I actually had a patient who was when she was signing on, she was trying to be really proactive because she'd done reading about EBV and the effects of chronic fatigue that it actually has. And she took it to her GP and said, can you test me for this? And the GP said no, because if you see a positive test, which 98% of the population have EBV at this point, it's going to give you a psychological chronic fatigue. And she was really like, but I'm already chronic fatigued. It's not a pseudo, it's happening now. And I want to know so I can fix myself. And so it is a paradigm shift when patients come in here to seeing their GP for 10 minutes versus our 2 initial appointments are an hour. Appointment 1 is understanding your story. What is it from birth to now to what your parents were doing to positively influence or negatively influence your life? And then appointment 2 is all about that biochemistry. So what is going on right now? 20 minutes downstairs, we're upstairs going through those results. And so it's that shift of, I can only see this person for 10 minutes and I've got to blab all of it and kind of focus on all the key bits and know that it's not this, the symptoms you're experiencing are real. It's that validation more than anything else is that if you're feeling particularly anxious or irritable or your PMS symptoms are going off the Richter scale, it's about understanding and validating that, because so often people come in and they're like, I think I'm suffering from this. I don't know. I know this happens each month and I'm at my wit's end, and what do I do about it? So it's just getting breaking the normal bounds, I suppose, and understanding yourself. Because if you're really in tune with yourself, when something's not right.
100%. Absolutely love that. It's also difficult in a world where we're bombarded by social media. You mentioned TikTok trends. Everyone's looking online, and wellness trends. How do you help people cut through the noise and focus on what's really right for them, especially when, there are people out there who might be saying things that might not be legit?
I think I love social media because it creates a community, especially I think in terms of women's health right now, where women can feel heard and they can ask questions without judgment and go, oh, well, you know what, I think I'm suffering from endometriosis. These are the symptoms I'm experiencing. And often you see that support coming through, and it's beautiful and encouraging to go to your GP and fight for your blood tests and do that. And I think that's amazing. I think it has drawbacks, and one of my biggest bugbears, or probably two, is the generalization and the selling of supplements on TikTok. Is, there's one that comes up on my For You page regularly that's like, oh, have you got a cortisol pouch? And it's like, here, take this anti-cortisol supplement and you'll be all right. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Your body is probably producing a high amount of cortisol because there's a stressor going on. And let's not turn off the fire alarms when there's a fire going on in the house. Let's look at what the causes are. And that's where that lifestyle comes in, because not everyone wants to take 20 supplements, but everyone can implement really simple lifestyle changes to benefit it. And I think the other wellness trend that I think I have bugbear with is this continual movement of what women have to be, right? It started with that clean girl aesthetic and being social, and then it's gone from the clean girl aesthetic to the Pilates girl, and you have to drink matcha and you've got to do Pilates 4 times a week, and it sets this expectation and this standard that you have to be doing all of this all the time to actually do something.
Well, that causes a stressor in itself, doesn't it?
It's enough to burn someone out, is to try and, do Pilates 4 times a week and then strength training 3 times a week. And I'm going on a run twice a day, and that 75 hard challenge that I, can't really and don't really have the time to do. TikTok says I should be doing it, and so I'm gonna do it. It's enough to exhaust someone. And, I have the humorous moments from as a practitioner side of, there's this whole matcha and everyone should drink matcha because it's so good for you. But actually, matcha it has lots of antioxidants. There's no denying that. It does have benefits, but it contains a compound called EGCG, and actually that slows COMT function down. And so if someone has an already slow COMT, so they're finding it harder to break down dopamine and estrogen and histamines and adrenaline, and they're drinking matcha 4 times a week because that's the thing to be drinking right now rather than a, vanilla iced latte, that actually is going to predispose them to a whole load more anxiety and insomnia and estrogen dominance. And that in turn creates this huge knock-on effect. And so it's tricky to find what works and what doesn't. But I think cutting through noise and going to, valuable resources, Dr. Casey Means is a really good one, or, the Institute of Functional Medicine, understanding and researching, like literally to the left of me have a book called Fix Your Period, right? Or the Vagina Bible. Reading and educating yourself through trusted sources is the best way to cut through those wellness trends, without a doubt. And I'm not saying don't drink matcha. Matcha's lovely. Just maybe don't drink it 4 times a week.
Agree. Yeah, that's great. And those examples are really interesting to hear as well. So for anyone who's listening and they feel tired, inflamed, or like their body just isn't working at the pace or the way they want it to be, what's the first step that you would suggest they take to begin their own U-shaped wellness journey?
First steps I would take would be lifestyle, right? Make sure you're eating as healthy as you can, as well as you can within your means. Like I work full time, 2 dogs, lovely partner who cooks dinner half the time, but there are those days when it piles up and I don't want to chop 27 different vegetables. So if it's easier to go for, the Sainsbury's own veggie mix that you're, opening the lid of and chucking in. So it's the fresh vegetable, they're just pre-cut and it's saving time, but you're still putting in those essential nutrients. Do that. Find ways to integrate healthy lifestyles that aren't going to be overwhelming and unattainable, because the point of living a healthy lifestyle is to live a really long, right? We're going for longevity. We're not going for a 2-month fix of this is what I'm doing right now, and then in 2 months I'm going to be exhausted from doing it, and then I'm going to go back to binge eating Krispy Kremes. So implement sustainable lifestyle, goals. Whether it's walking the dog or going for, as I say, the Sainsbury's broccoli, asparagus, peas, kale mix. And even if it's tearing the lid off and chucking those veggies in, you're still putting goodness in. And then, get your sleep right. And if you're having trouble sleeping, investigate the different factors. You can do things like lemon balm. Lemon balm activates GABA and zinc. And so get your sleep working really well. Get your bowels working good, because there's so much talked about the gut-brain connection, and talking about your bowel movements is kind of a taboo topic, but you should be having 2-3 really good bowel movements a day and feeling good when you have them. It shouldn't be a stress of like, oh, shoot, I've got to go to the bathroom. I'm going to have to do it really urgently. So get your bowels moving good, and that will come in from the food and the diet and the lifestyle, and create stable blood sugar. And just get hydrated, get moving. It's those simple things. And my go-to is go on to a B complex of some kind, because those Bs are going to set up that methylation process really, really effectively. Bs and vitamin D, you're going to live a great life.
You mentioned sleep. I have struggled with insomnia in the past, and it's hell. So yes, I think that people underestimate the power of sleep and how much we need it. I think, don't we spend 1/3 of our life asleep? But hydration, another one. Tell us why hydration is important.
Hydration is so important because it gives your muscles, or what I should say is hydration is important because it's important for the organs, it's important for the blood, it's important for the muscles. It's crucial, but taking electrolytes so you can really absorb that water, we don't absorb water particularly well, and water follows electrolytes. So if you're losing your minerals, putting minerals in to give you energy to help those cellular functions is going to be really important. You're going to absorb your water more, you're going to feel better, have more energy. It's all the tiny shifts that you can make. If we think about electrolytes, magnesium, for example, is used in over 300 chemical reactions in the mitochondria, and those mitochondria are so important, right? They're the powerhouse of the cell, if you want to go back to GCSE, CXE biology, but they're the motherboard of the cell, right? They give you energy, they help you feel really good. And it's, in today's society, very easy to fall into kind of living like this. Dr. Casey Means said it really well, of like this black and white life of where you're kind of going from one to the other, and we very quickly lose our color. And actually our mitochondria, our energy producers, are the things that give us color and make us find those joys in life. And I think for anyone listening who is thinking, oh, I'm feeling really tired, or I'm feeling really stressed, the best measurer you can use on yourself is how often do you find small amounts of joy. And I ask all of my patients that, is, where do you find your joy, right? Is it the dogs? Is it the butterflies? Is it the clouds above? Is it stopping and smelling the roses, or even the color of the trees? When you feel good, you find those joyful moments because everything is, mostly working properly. And as I say, it doesn't have to be every day. Even I wake up some days and I'm like, oh my God, it's Friday and it's been one hell of a week and I need the weekend. But you should be finding those small amounts of joy. And if you can't find them, then you can start making positive changes to create them. And that's what I love about this job. That's what gives me joy in my job, is being able to help people find their joy, whatever it might be.
Well, Phoenix, this has been absolutely fascinating. I have learned so much, and you've made me want to literally run to your clinic right now to get myself tested. So for anyone who wants to learn more about an integrative medicine approach and how
got
it can
it.
support you, or book an appointment, schedule a call with Phoenix today. We've linked up your details in the description here to the podcast. And I do recommend that people take that time to get a personalized consult to find out more and dive a bit deeper into what might be going on. You can't put a price on health, like you mentioned.
No,
So,
you can't.
well, it's been lovely chatting to you. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast today.
I know, it's been lovely. Thank you so much for having me.